Brian Roach with you here. Good Karma Wrestling, the wrestling world, makes its way to Philadelphia this week. And one of the shows that'll be stealing the spotlight, Bloodsport 10, Thursday, April 4th, 4 p.m. at Penn's Landing. And joining us now, the man whose name is on it all, Josh Barnett, joining us. Bloodsport 10. When you hear that, how crazy is that for you to realize you've now been able to put on 10 of these blood sports?
It's as it should be. I never intended to make this a one and done, or to do. In fact, that we're only up to 10 says that we got to work harder. But it's a good place to be. Landing directly on WrestleMania weekend, or week, I should say, because that is almost it's usually the biggest show of ours throughout the year. Sometimes it's the only show, but that's not the intention.
We know the top indie talent that'll be in town, and we see so many big shows throughout the week. But Bloodsport's the only one that's going to have talent from Impact, talent from New Japan, talent from AEW, and talent from the WWE. How in the world does that come to be?
I guess I greased all the right palms, kissed all the right asses. I don't know. I'm just fortunate, is all I could really say, and I think that it just goes to show you that what's been built with Bloodsport here has proven itself to be something that is valued not just by our fan base and by the wrestlers that are commonly associated with it, but by those from the outside, like New Japan, like AEW, like WWE. And they think it's a valid place to send their talent and let their athletes run wild.
Shayna Baszler will be representing the WWE, taking on Masha Slamovich from Impact. When you get the yes on someone like Shayna, what is that feeling like amongst your team?
I mean, it's a surprise even for me, who I'm her manager and her coach, but I fully recognize that the commitments to being a WWE athlete are well, they're first and foremost, and anybody that puts that kind of effort and into securing the use of a particular talent, they want it for themselves and they want to protect that investment. So it shows that they have a lot of trust towards me and what I'm doing here, and towards Brett and myself with GCW in this show. And I just want to do as much as I can to not only prove them right, which I have no concerns with, but ultimately, this is a wrestler's show. This is a show that I want the wrestlers to be first and foremost, and to really feel like they're getting something out of this that they can't get anywhere else, and that they get to be in a ring that is really oriented around them and wrestling, purely, simply in this Ross form, the hardest hitting form at that.
How validating is it for you making the transition from the MMA world, you're still dabbling there, to the pro wrestling world, to have these wrestlers want to give you the time? How validating is that for you on a personal level?
Well, on one end, I've said before that if my rep in the general public eye versus if it was the same, or to even half as high as it is with like wrestlers, offices, things like that, you'd probably get sick of me seeing me being mentioned and talked about. But it also kind of makes a lot of sense, because I've been a person that's always put those, what I would say, on the ground relationships first, because as much as I've met plenty of fans, and I will meet more in the future, and I'm always glad for those that have become diehards for what it is that just I do in general, and following me to wherever I go, let alone discovering me through Josh Barnett's Bloodsport and supporting the wrestlers and all of that, right? I could go on and on with all the different platitudes about, liking the fans. And I have a ton of appreciation and respect for them. But they're kind of an abstract, in that you never know who is going to be there and when and what. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why a person may or may not be able to purchase a ticket or even buy the pay-per-view. And you're just glad when they can show up, and it's really on your mind to make sure that they feel like they got not just the value out of it, and then some. But I've always really put a priority towards those, like I was referring to, on the ground, real relationships that I'm interacting with, face to face, name to name basis all the time, because that's the foundation for where we can build all these different projects up, and then fans will come if you build the thing that they want to see.
Tickets are sold out for Thursday, 4 o'clock Eastern in Philly, but Triller TV to watch this show.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to this wacky world of pro wrestling, what was it that originally drew you to it personally?
I've always been a huge fan. I mean, massive. I grew up with it. Being a kid of the 80s, I fell into a real sweet spot with content in general. And there's a lot of stuff that I have to give credit to the expansion of cable, UHF and VHF, and all the all the new channels that are popping up all over the place, locals becoming syndicated, and so on and so forth, and even satellite, which was a much rarer media offering in the 80s, but it existed, and I knew people that had it. So with that and the need to create and get as much content as possible, that's where wrestling came in, and how wrestling in, say, the AWA or the NWA, which was, you have Minnesota and Atlanta, before it got bought and turned into WCW.
Right.
Well, but they're creating these partnerships with other, or syndication. So these are put out all over the United States, and so I got to watch them. And with that, also, like, every kind of weird, goofy thing that I ended up becoming a fan of, like horror films and kung fu flicks and kaiju movies and anime and whatever. So I'm lucky for that from the 80s. But yeah, wrestling was everywhere. It was enormous, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. It just falls in the vein of just watching people beat each other up, and you love it. Just like the kung fu films, just like martial arts flicks and all that. And given an opportunity to finally get a chance to be in the ring by reaching out to a friend who was working in New Japan at the time, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, and it turned out to be something even bigger than I'd ever hoped for or imagined.
Your resume is expansive in the MMA world, in the pro wrestling world, in the ring, out of the ring. What else is there to accomplish for you? What do you still have in front of you in terms of goals?
That's a good question. I guess, first and foremost, keep building Josh Barnett's Bloodsport. We've expanded. I've taken it over to Japan, June 22nd, Ryogoku Kokugi-Con, also known as Sumo Hall. We will be doing Bloodsport Bushido, and we've already announced a list of people that will be participating. Myself, Minoru Suzuki, bodybuilding legend Mike O'Hearn, Olympic silver medalist David Mozmanishvili, Rampage Jackson, who you will all know as a UFC champion and a superstar from Pride, Kazushi Sakuraba, the Gracie Hunter, another massive get from the world of Japanese MMA, and somebody who was born and raised out of the professional wrestling disciplines by being a UWF wrestler, and Masakatsu Funaki, another king of pancrase like myself and Minoru Suzuki, and a guy that was, if he hadn't had left to do the shoot and MMA side of things, I have no doubt in my mind he would have been a huge star in New Japan too, because that's where he made his start. Same with Minoru Suzuki.
June 22nd, that show in Tokyo. Davey Boy Smith Jr. I saw also announced. We see it on the business side with TKO, with the UFC and WWE being under the same umbrella now. How much do you see the crossover with fans being MMA and being pro wrestling fans? Because I feel like social media sometimes shines it as they don't like each other and there's a dislike there. How much do you see that crossover?
I think it's less than we think it is. I don't think it's that there's a lot of crossover. I think there's some fair weather, maybe somewhat casual fans that may enjoy both. I think there are diehards that enjoy both, and then there are diehards for each one.
Sure.
But that could change, anything is possible with the winds of professional wrestling and MMA being the way that they are and constantly changing. 1 minute it's a gentle breeze, next minute it's a full-blown typhoon. You don't know what's going to hit and when. I don't think it's a bad idea to think about them in a pairing as such, but I think that it's a mistake to think that they are something that can just be traveled across easily. And that goes for how you promote it, but also thinking in regards to talent going either way. And that's okay. I feel like they're each separate disciplines, although they are, in my opinion, they're one side of the same coin. So MMA fighters are pro wrestlers and pro wrestlers are MMA fighters, so to speak, in a sense. But going out there and working a match and going out there and being a full-time professional MMA fighter, they're different. Also, I would say that if this was 1975, it'd be a different story. This is 2024, and the way people train to be professional wrestlers isn't really conducive towards MMA like it may have used to be.
And I feel like guys like you, someone like a Shayna Baszler, you almost show MMA fans like, hey, like this isn't for the unprepared. Like you still can be a tough guy and go into the world of pro wrestling. I feel like you guys are sort of bridging that gap a little bit.
Well, yes, and there's a lot of people that have really accomplished backgrounds in combat sports, like Nick Nemeth, who will be competing at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 10. John Morrison, he's 1-0 in boxing. He's also an ex-collegiate wrestler, which when he was announced for, I think it was like Bloodsport 7, I think might have been his debut, or 8, people were like, well, this is the craziest sounding thing. Or here's another one where people are like, what? And that's Santino Marella. He was a international level judo guy, trained battle arts and by Ishikawa. So when he showed up, he gave me an incredible performance out there against Simon Grimm. And to me, I was not surprised in the least. But I know other people are like, okay, I never would have thought that this would have been a guy to see in Bloodsport and to perform at such a level and look so at home. But that's one of the kind of fun things that I love to, let's say, exploit whenever possible. But then if you go back to the WWE, there's Bobby Lashley. Him and I were going from cage to cage, beating the crap out of people and racking up the wins. So, it's always good when he gets the recognition for all the work he did when we were training him for his big fights. But I always feel like he's gone a little too early from MMA. I would have liked to have seen him do more, but that's just me. He's doing amazing things in WWE, and I'm glad to see him getting that top shelf recognition.
Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, Triller TV. If you can't be there in Philadelphia, you mentioned Nick Nemeth. He's taking on Speedball Mike Bailey Thursday on that show. Heard him talk about, hey, he needs to prove to himself that he can exist outside that WWE bubble. He's been in it his whole career. How much does Bloodsport offer someone like him an opportunity to go out there and just be violent?
Arguably, I think we offer more than anybody else can, because when you come to this arena, everything is stripped away. So there are many, many great wrestling companies out there. And, Nick is I think he's the Intercontinental Champion for New Japan Pro Wrestling right now. That's a massive win and a really nice feather in his cap. And of no surprise to me that he would accomplish such a thing, even as quickly as he has. But if you go to New Japan Pro Wrestling, there's these massive glitzy arenas and stage presence, and there's all the trimmings and the other external elements around all these matches. Plus, everybody is as gimmicked out as possible, and there's a bit of it's hard to call it a safety net of sorts, but a bit, right? Or you could even say they're accentuating aspects. With Bloodsport, none of that is there. And it's not to say like we are deliberately not having as nice a production as New Japan or something like that, because even if we had the same budgets, we'd do it differently. And ultimately, at the end of the day, not only is it that this is I want this to be a wrestler's type of event. It's not just about allowing them an opportunity to shine, but that's all that's available. We've stripped this thing down as much as possible. So you have no safety rails. You have nothing else that you can lean on to try and make what you do out there have the impact that you want it to. It's just you. It's just you and your opponent, and he's looking to get his. So only one's going to come out with their hand raised. But I think that because of how stripped down and raw Josh Barnett's Bloodsport is, it actually is the place for someone to really either ignite who they are to people that are unaware, or reignite and show everybody that what you've come to understand about me can now be flipped on its head.
Last few things here. Josh Barnett ahead of Bloodsport 10 Thursday in Philadelphia. That Philadelphia crowd, they're sort of known for wanting their violence, for being extreme. How excited are you to see what they add to the show this week?
Honestly, I hadn't even been thinking about it. But yeah, well, no frying pans or unusual objects are going to end up in the ring.
No batteries. You're not bringing Santa Claus out there.
No, no strippers in the rafters either. Sorry, but come Thursday the 4th, they're going to get their fill of violence and then some. It'll carry them through the rest of the week.
That's fair. Last couple things. We've seen a buddy of yours, Jon Moxley, main event these shows. We've seen him in the ring with you. On a friendship level, how cool is it to see what he's able to do also outside the WWE bubble and just having fun showing up wherever the hell he wants nowadays?
It's super cool. And I love to see him enjoying himself, working in a way that he wants to, and just being in a place where he feels, he feels appreciated, and also with the right amount of freedom so that he can carve his destiny in pro wrestling the way he wants to. And John's an incredibly hard worker. He's a good man, good father, and whatever he's out there he's doing, I've got his back. Even if I have to try and break it because we're going at it with each other. Either way, he knows I'm going to give it my all.
Thursday in Philly, it's Josh Barnett versus Johnny Bloodsport. Shayna Baszler versus Slamovich. Nick Nemeth versus Speedball Mike Bailey. June 22nd in Japan, Rampage Jackson, Davey Boy Smith Jr., Suzuki. The cards are lining up. Who else is out there? Well, who are you saying, like, all right, one day I need them on this card? When Mick Foley says he wants to have one more, final match, does that perk your interest? Who do you want to see out there still in Bloodsport?
That's a good question. I think you'll know it when they're there.
Okay.
I talked to a lot of different people, ones you expect, ones you don't. And there's always talent that is out there in the world that just hasn't been discovered yet. And I'm always looking for that as well. I like to try and take my cues from people like Akira Maeda and Antonio Inoki, who were able to scour the earth and just find people that at the time must have seemed like, well, who is this guy? I mean, interesting, but then they become legendary, like a Volkan or like a Big Van Vader.
Sure. There will be shows all throughout Philly, but Bloodsport 10 will be the one that has wrestlers from every single promotion, it feels like, under one umbrella. Thursday, 4 p.m. Philadelphia, Triller TV if you can't be there in person. Josh, thanks so much for the time and best of luck this week.
Thank you very much.